Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome to the WTIM Morning Show. I'm Avery Cooper. Your stream brought to you by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. You can find those streams online on TaylorvilleDailyNews.com's Facebook or on YouTube on WTIM TV. I'm here in studio with University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator Andrew Hulsinger. Great to have you here, Andrew.
Hey, always good to be here.
It is great to have you here. It is summertime officially, and a lot of people are thinking about how they can create a little bit more shade in their backyards, and they're thinking about, well, let me plant a tree. And you're here to tell us a little bit about some of the do's and don'ts of planting a tree.
Yeah, planting trees, usually we do this in the springtime or in the fall. It makes for a great time for having some shade in the backyard or places that you need it. But oftentimes I get calls, questions about why is my tree failing or what has happened to my tree. And so it's just important to, as we have dry weather, as we've had recently, to think about watering your trees and to provide some moisture to those trees. Even if they're a well-established tree, they're going to take some water because they lose a lot of water through the method of transpiration. The leaves are losing water as they're photosynthesizing and creating food for the plant. They're also losing a lot of moisture, and that even goes with your needled evergreens as well. They lose moisture as well. So keeping your plants watered is going to be an important factor. We have had, some really hot temperatures here in the recent past, and so just think about that when it comes to plants and planting trees, and be sure to think about the species that you're selecting for your yard, that it fits with the situation that you have, and look at your yard and see what obstacles you might have, views of driveways, power lines, utilities. You always need to check with the utilities, call that 811 and contact Julie, get those areas marked so they're flagged and you know what may be in your backyard so you don't hit a unnecessarily, fiber optic line, gas line, those kinds of things.
Call 811 before you dig.
Amen.
Yeah. Not horticulture related, but definitely important. 811 before you dig for a tree. You mentioned the moisture with the trees. How much do you see that become prevalent with younger trees as opposed to older trees?
Well, for younger trees, it's especially important as they're newly planted, they are going to be establishing and developing their root system. And so you don't want them to dry out. And, we dig the hole wider than the root system to allow for those roots to penetrate into that new area. And so the easier that transition is for those roots to transition, moisture, watering beyond like where the roots are going to expand, like just don't water near the trunk. Spread out that moisture so the roots can travel there and go there.
Right, not just at the root of the trunk. That makes a lot of sense. What are some of the trees that people plant oftentimes in the spring? What are some of the species that are very popular and work well, and what are some of the ones that maybe don't work as well?
Well, there's often that desire for a shade tree, and sometimes people get well, I need this shade almost immediately, so they look at things. I look back historically, like the silver maples were planted, fast growing tree, but they tend to be, anything that's really fast growing tends to be weak wooded and has problems in storms, as we've had a number of storms come through recently. And that just causes problems in the future for, cleaning up the branches and those limbs dropping. So I think also we've had a number of pests that have affected trees. So we no longer probably plant the ash trees like we had in the past, because the emerald ash borer has devastated the ash trees across the state. So you got to think about what maybe your common pests are. Maple trees do have some pests that at once were a problem, but have been mitigated. So, and there's usually an overplanting of maple trees. They do provide fall color, but there's many other trees that provide fall color. I think of the black gum or tupelo tree that can have some vibrant color. Even the sweet gum can provide fall color, but people like to avoid those gum balls, if you will. But there are cultivars that are developed that are not fruiting, so you don't have to worry about the gum balls.
Well, how could you describe, or how would you describe rather, a good spot to plant a tree, right? We need shade pretty soon. Probably not really going to get that shade for another year or two, right? But how would you describe that perfect spot for a tree?
Well, I think it's a process of site analysis. And for the site, selecting the right tree for that location is going to be vital. So think about things like the distance away from the house. How big of a tree are you planting, and what is the crown of the tree? Where is that drip line going to be in the future? Because usually the roots are going to extend at least to the drip line, if not beyond that. And then think about things of seasonality of, like, do you want fall color? Are you looking for things that have fruit? Are you, a sycamore can be a great tree, but they often have large leaves that you may have to contend with in the fall. So thinking about the aspects of the tree and what your desires are, and usually you can find a suitable tree and narrow it down to just a handful of trees that may be good in that area. But checking the soil conditions, some trees are not adapted to very wet areas. So thinking about all the aspects of your soil, light conditions. If you have a flowering tree, you don't necessarily want it to be shaded out where it's not going to flower.
Now, I don't want to cause alarm. It has been a dry spring so far. If it continues to be a dry summer, well, we could start getting into light drought conditions. So what are some trees that you can plant that can withstand those conditions?
Well, when I think about drought and trees, I usually think about our native species because they're more adapted to these conditions of being in the environments where you may have drought. So one of the classic examples is hackberry. So a hackberry tree is a pretty durable tree. It does have an interesting bark. So that's another feature you can look at for, some appeal, if you will. So think about that. In times past, the birch trees before they were really succumbed to by some of the pests. But one of the main things is even if you're going to have pests or diseases, it's probably a thing that triggers it the most is the amount of stress on the tree. When a tree becomes stressed, it pretty much would be a red flag to insects and disease that this tree is under stress. This will make a good time to enter in and cause problems. So think about those things and try to reduce the amount of stress. So, adequate watering, all these cultural practices, providing mulch, but do not put mulch up around the base of the tree or against the trunk of the tree. You want to have a low amount of mulch. Think about a bagel instead of a muffin. You don't want a mulch cano, if you will. You want to have just a moderate amount of mulch to get the job done, to avoid competition from the turf grass, and provide that weed barrier, if you will. Oftentimes we see weed eater damage to trees. They just get too close. Once that cambium has been disrupted, it destroys the flow of water and nutrients on that part of the tree, and you've just damaged your tree. So just be careful whenever you're doing trimming or mowing. Some of the trees can have shallow roots, may emerge from the soil, so you have to be careful of that as well to try to avoid any damage to your trees throughout the summer and the rest of the year.
Mulch cano is a image I didn't expect to have in my mind today, but I really do like it. Mulch cano.
Well, mulch does conserve moisture, so it's a
Right.
great tool whenever you're trying to conserve moisture in the heat of the summer.
Yeah. But don't volcano it into a big mulchcano. Don't do that.
Right.
That is University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator Andrew Halsinger here on the WTIM morning show. More from him after this short break. People's Bank and Trust proud to bring you this stream on TaylorvilleDailyNews.com's Facebook and WTIM TV YouTube. They put people first, along with Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark.
WTIM.
Don DeBolt is lying again. Lying about Steve McClure. Lying about his own record.
Bet you didn't know this. As school board president, DeBolt raised property taxes 13 times.
13 times? DeBolt raised property taxes 13 times? Families can't afford that.
I know, that's a 56% tax hike.
No wonder DeBolt's lying. 13 tax hikes? Come on.
Steve McClure has a long record of fighting tax hikes and wasteful spending.
Yeah, McClure led the fight against the graduated income tax hike.
And McClure sponsored legislation cutting the gas sales tax and providing real property tax relief.
Ah, that's why McClure's endorsed by the State Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, the state chamber endorsed McClure because of his commitment to lower taxes.
DeBolt doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's flat out lying.
Don't be misled. Steve McClure is the strong conservative we need in the state Senate.
Paid for by friends of Steve McClure.
This is Jim Adcock with People's Bank and Trust, where customers have one business banker who understands their business and provides the right financial services to achieve their goals. Your business banker is your single source for all your financial needs, from cash management to lines of credit, from mortgages to equipment loans, and everything in between. Call me at 888-PBT-1954. Bank with People's Bank and Trust, so you can spend your time running your business, not explaining it. At People's Bank and Trust, we put people first. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
I'm staff meteorologist Paul Trombley, inviting you to listen to our regional radio forecast twice an hour from Taylorville, Pana, and Shelbyville to Effingham, Hillsborough, Vandalia, and Decatur. You can now rely on our localized weather forecasts. We'll tell you whether you'll need a snow shovel, raincoat, or sunscreen. We're proud to be a part of the regional radio team providing compelling local content to listeners across central Illinois. I'm staff meteorologist Paul Trombley. Glad to be part of your family every day.
Hello, I'm Dick Adams, the new Executive Director of the Christian County Economic Development Corporation. From helping Taylorville and Pana establish and promote their industrial parks to constant communication with existing and prospective employers, our ongoing work has helped grow and attract many businesses. Funding comes from both public and private sources and is vital to continuing our work toward attracting more jobs. Find out more online at christiancountyedc.org.
This announcement donated by the Miller Media Group.
Computer Techniques, also known as CTI, is bringing fiber internet to local homes and businesses. For lag-free internet with speeds up to 1 gig, find out more by clicking their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Westervelt Mutual Insurance offers a quality home insurance product that can't be beat and provides us with the peace of mind we need. Find an agent near you by clicking on their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome to the WTIM morning show. I'm Avery Cooper. Your stream brought to you by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. Find those streams online on the TaylorvilleDailyNews.com Facebook or on YouTube on WTIM TV. I'm here in studio with University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator Andrew Halsinger. Great to have you here, Andrew.
Hey, thanks.
So talking about trees, and right now is the time where you're kind of scouting for disease and issues that those trees that you may have planted in the spring might be having. So what do you do? Actually, let's back up a little bit. How can you notice when a tree is having issues?
Well, oftentimes it's a subtle process of, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, it takes a while for symptoms to occur, and it can even linger into the years of time before you'll find out a particular problem. When we had the severe drought, it took a toll on a number of trees, and people didn't realize that they should have been watering their trees whenever this drought was occurring, because it just didn't allow for those root systems to survive. And so as those root systems became smaller, they took up less water and they provided less nutrients and growth for the tree. And so one thing you can do is to look at how much did the tree grow this year. And you can look according to the bud scales or the amount of growth that's been produced. And that's a good guide for, the health of the tree and to find out maybe where that tree's at and its seasonality, whether you may need to provide fertilizer or other items that may, help the tree out.
Right. Well, speaking of helping the tree out, if you do notice that the tree is having issues, where can they go to find help and help out that tree?
Well, the University of Illinois Extension has, some guides as far as what common problems would occur. We have some fact sheets with the University of Illinois Plant Clinic, things like oak trees or spruce trees, give you some guidance to some of the general problems that you might have. But oftentimes we have more severe problems by the time that the client comes to us and says, I have an issue. I really need somebody to come out and look at it to let me know if this is worthy of removal or am I going to be able to save the tree? And those are really questions for a certified arborist. An arborist is trained in tree care. They are, up to date with their continuing education on all the latest that's going on. And so they're a good resource to contact to find out and triage the problems that your tree may have and to help maybe with some of the curative things like arborists sometimes can apply, pesticides or insecticides into the tree through injection methods or just provide some good advice for tree care as well.
Where can people find an arborist?
Well, there is a helpful website that is treesaregood.org. And so you can go to that website. There's a tab that's find an arborist, and you can put in your zip code, your general information of where your target area is, where you live, and you'll be able to narrow it down to the credentials of what the arborist has and call one up and find out what their availability is. I know it's as many storms have been through this year. There's probably quite a bit of arborists out and about. So just give them a call and see when they can get you scheduled in.
Treesaregood.org is part of the International Society of Arboriculture. Yeah,
right, yep.
That's a little bit. So they have also a bunch of tree care basics and a lot of other different tree resources and Q&A and stuff. It's a really cool website. Well, also here locally, there's also a center, right, that people can go to and ask questions, and they can for stuff like trees too that you had mentioned to me off air.
Yeah, we have our locally we have the extension office where we sometimes in Christian County especially have a master gardener help desk, and they can help with some general questions like maybe you want to know what kind of tree you have and identify it, tree identification, maybe some of the less intense items
Right.
to, is this a gall on my oak tree or what kind is it? Some of these things. But whenever you get into the more severe problems, we have a University of Illinois Plant Clinic at Champaign-Urbana. And so they have lots of equipment, lots of tests that they can run. And it's a pretty low fee for the information that you have because they run, maybe the battery of tests. Like, for example, if I had an oak tree and I was wondering what's wrong with my oak tree, well, you might send in a sample of a branch that's alive, usually in the early part of the week, Monday, Tuesday. So it has time to travel, get there before the weekend. But they would test maybe for oak wilt, see if there's streaking in the bark of the sample that they receive. Put it in maybe a humidity chamber, see if there's fungal diseases. And then so they can start to eliminate what is not there.
Right.
And so they can narrow it down to what maybe the problem is or find, the presence of insects that maybe you have jumping oak, jumping mites on your tree. So they can help to diagnose.
That's University of Illinois Extension horticulture educator Andrew Halsinger. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Hey, good to be here.
With SRN News, I'm Rich Thomason in Washington. Gun control legislation